Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on a pretty as a picture Wednesday. Absolutely beautiful. Not a cloud in the sky, bright blue sunlight, and mild temperatures. It's not cold, it's not chilly, but it's not hot. It's just perfect. So it's the kind of day that feels almost wrong to spend it entirely reading and writing on the fainting couch, which might explain how many times the Bean and I have been out today and will be out before the day is over. Especially since it looks like there might be a threat of rain all day tomorrow. That just makes today more and more of that feeling of don't waste it. so I'm going to make a couple of videos today, but I think most of the day is going to be devoted to my little ham sandwich. But I've got a little bit here: 2 periodicals and 2 packages. And the first periodical is the Bedford Times Press from Bedford, Iowa, a local Iowa paper, very small thing with. Let's see, we've got the local Utes competing, beautiful color photography. We've got local news. What do we have here on the cover? Addie Powell raises money to send children to school in Uganda. Now you have some Ugandans digging a well and building a school. Quite an impressive building. I wonder if there'll be solar paneling up there. And you might wonder, well, those of you who are new to the channel might be wondering, why are you getting a local Iowa newspaper and why are you talking about it? It's because there's one element in the Bedford Times Press that is not local. The one element that's not local is my own column. They run my book column every week in the Bedford Times Press. There I am. See that? And your paper can too. If you have a local paper, if you have an in at your local newspaper, get them to contact me. My rates are very reasonable. And then you'd have this column yourself. You can get this in the Bedford Times Press. You can. It's all paywalled, so you would have to subscribe. But you could do that, of course. You'll get. I get it on my doorstep in Boston, 1,000 miles away from Taylor County. You could do that. And a slightly easier route to reading this column every week would be to convince the powers that be at your local newspaper to run it themselves. That way you wouldn't have to stir out of bed. What was I obsessing about when I wrote this column? Just the other day, it happened again. What's bothering me this time, you might ask? It's something that's been bothering me for a long, long time. Authors responding publicly to critics. It's an age-old problem, and it's had many famous examples over the decades and centuries. Authors have stalked their critics, slandered them, and even socked them in the jaw at parties. Authors have written entire Jeremiads against their critics, and sometimes they've even found publishers or newspaper editors willing to put those Jeremiads into print, to the amazement, dismay, and schadenfreude of the readers everywhere. I personally believe that even the irate authors themselves are dismayed once the lava of their anger cools and they look soberly at what they've done. So you might wonder what's so bad about an author responding in public to a critic. After all, don't authors enjoy the same free speech rights as everybody else? If they see something irritating, particularly if it involves them by name, don't they have the right to fire back in their own defense? Oh, they've got the right, okay, but it's still wrong, wrong, wrong. And then I go into details in the column. So that's always great to see. It's great to get the physical paper in the mail. And then the other periodical I got is the London Times Literary Supplement, TLS, the greatest English language literary journal in the world. And it had quite a few interesting things. There was one thing in the back in the NB column that hit close to home. So I thought I would read that to you. The NB column in the back of the TLS is sort of general roving, opinionizing, and rabble-rousing, maybe even a little clickbaiting. And the opening article is this. We are inclined to regard chutzpah as an admirable quality. 2 unrelated expressions of it, however, now give us pause to suggest we should reconsider. One concerns giving and is vaguely specialist in nature. And this is what they go into in this first one. Quote, I've just refused to review a book an academic called Rachel Willie announced on Twitter last month. Quote, and declined to suggest a reviewer on the grounds that the book is available only as a PDF. Minor though the point might seem, we fear that Dr. Willie has been the victim of a very modern discourtesy. The assumption now seems to be, mainly among academic publishers, that they are in the business of selling hardbacks and paperbacks and fobbing off reviewers with a digital avatar. If a book is only published in digital form, or some other practical issue arises, perhaps the fobbing off is fair enough. Otherwise, it seems a potentially self-defeating piece of impudence. Whereas book publicists remain kindly keen on keeping literary editors' inboxes full with a deluge of emails about new titles, they surely remain aware that the best selling point for those titles, assuming them to be worth selling in the first place, remains a copy that the reviewer may browse, bookmark, dog-ear, scribble in, and even read in a spirit of separation from whatever distracting windows lurk on their computer screen. We know we are not alone in this quaint view of the matter. The academics who, a couple of years ago, organized an open letter addressed to the academic publishers Palgrave Macmillan and Springer on this theme, asking them to reconsider, speak for many a freelance reviewer, too, we suspect. Very, very interesting for the TLS to come out and call that a modern habit impudence. That is, I'm not sure that I would have put it so strongly, but it is nevertheless true, and certainly not only with academic presses, where since the pandemic, what was that little line? I glossed right over it because I firmly believe you were meant to gloss over it. What's the best, assuming them to be worth selling in the first place, remains that a reviewer may browse, where is it here? Maybe they are in the business of selling. If a book is only available in digital form, then it's okay to send a digital copy. But what's the other thing they shoehorn in here? Or some other practical issue arises. This is one of the most glancing references I have ever seen to the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. But that did change things. Suddenly publishers stopped sending everything to every reviewer. Suddenly that stopped happening, as you've seen on this channel, right? We used to get a plastic mail tub full of books every day, sometimes more than one. Sometimes the first mail delivery would give a whole porch full of books, and then the second mail delivery of the day would also give a whole porch full of books. That doesn't happen anymore. It hasn't gone back to happening, even though there's an effective vaccine. Lots and lots of people are vaccinated. Hospital rates and fatalities are way, way down for COVID-19. And all of these publishers have those protocols in place. Even though that's true, as I predicted, they have not largely gone back to their old practice of just scattershot. Because ebooks are available. E-copies are available, and they're easy to do. A publisher can send it at the touch of a button or organize it through NetGalley or whatever. And that was fine as a stopgap when the whole world was shut down. But the whole world isn't shut down anymore. And it isn't fine for anything other than a stopgap, for the reasons that the NB column points out, and many other reasons besides. What good does a NetGalley download do me if I want to send a copy of a book to a reviewer for review? It does me no good whatsoever. An ebook copy just in general does me no good whatsoever. Reviewers get paid precious little as it is without not even getting a physical copy of the book. And there's something to be said, we saw it yesterday, those Auden volumes, there's something to be said for seeing what a book actually looks like. And that's important, and that ought to go back to the way it was. Publishers have not done that. They figure if they've got an ebook to send you, they'll just send it to you. They do, as the writer in the NB column points out, still bombard you with emails about forthcoming books. I would much rather get the books and decide for myself. And I know, and the NB column is right, I'm not alone in that at all. Lots of reviewers don't like that. Not every reviewer has, free access to the book rooms of a newspaper, so they can just waltz in and see what's new. And even the newspapers, even institutions, don't get everything anymore. They get emails, and then the pattern has shifted from you will get an email and you'll also get the book to you'll get an email and you have to express interest in the book in order to even get a chance of a physical copy. Which is not how it's supposed to work at all. I don't know if I'm interested in reviewing a book until I read it. It's the chance you take. Anyway, there was one other thing that was of interest in this TLS. Well, the whole thing is interesting. But there was a letter in the letters page. I almost fired off a letter like this myself. I came an inch away from writing. But someone named K. Chaudhry did it for me. someone named K. Chaudhry has written a letter perfectly expressing what I was going to say, only in more temperate terms, which is good for everybody. Because recently there was a poet named Stephanie C. Kia who wrote had a book of poetry called Amnion. And the TLS commissioned Dominic Leonard to review the book. And the review was largely positive, but it wasn't glowing. It wasn't ecstatic. It wasn't, the Messiah has finally returned. Dominic Leonard, I don't know Dominic Leonard, but I am sure that Dominic Leonard, in his own defense, I will say, I am sure that he wasn't aware that the book he was reviewing, Amnion, was one of the books that you have to respond to that way, as if it is Jesus come back to earth. I'm sure that he didn't know that. Maybe he's not on Twitter. But he got chastised for it. A group of people decided to gang up and bully him. If you have an objection to how he reviews a book, you write a letter, right? Either to him or to the TLS. If you want to gang up and bully him, get him canceled, get him his name publicly blackened, you circulate a public letter to your friends and get a whole bunch of signatures in an attempt to get a wave rolling to get Dominic Leonard canceled. And that happened in the TLS. And this writer named Kay Chowdhury responds. Dominic Leonard's review of Stephanie Sikier's Amnion provoked her friends and mentors at Ledbury Poetry Circuit critics to gather signatories for a letter. Dr. Howe, Dr. Palmer, Dr. Ravintharan emphasize the importance of framing in their letter, about their collective letter to bully the reviewer. Their own framing would encourage us to view Leonard as a white man displaying unconscious bias, inexperienced in the legacies of post-lyric writing by minoritized poets, dangerously close to being sexist, and leading us to a prejudiced encounter with the text. Now, when the TLS published that letter, Dominic Leonard wrote in his own defense and pointed out that none of their criticism for valid. He quoted from his own review to prove that. Grave charges indeed, writes Kay Chowdhury. If Leonard remains inexperienced and prejudiced despite an MA in post-colonial literature and cultural studies and admiration for experimental writers of color such as Banu Kapil and Vani Anthony Capildio, who I note is a signatory of the letter in question. So this guy has praised the work of someone who joined in a bullying attempt to get him canceled. What sort of experience must a reviewer have to read Sikier's book? Perhaps the TLS should only match the text to her associates in poetry, a professor of poetry at Liverpool University or King's College or Harvard, for example. Perhaps instead of an MA, one needs a doctorate before reading Amnion, and the book isn't for the general literary reader at all. Or perhaps TLS readers can see the open letter for what it is, an entirely spurious complaint against the editors and reviewer for daring to publish a bad review of one of the stars of their emerging critics' scheme. I'm not sure the Ledbury poetry critics' reputation will. I'm sure that Sikier's reputation will survive a 300-word blow. I'm not sure the Ledbury poetry critics' reputation will. They seem to assert that writers of color need specialist reviewers, specialist readers, and their own particular brand of specialist pleading. Thankfully, for their scheme hasn't recruited and neutered all the critics of the land yet, and until it does, they will have to bear the disappointment of the occasional unvarnished review. Now, I would be willing to bet, I'd be willing to bet you a Boston cream pie, that what was it again? The Ledbury Poetry Critics Circle responds to this letter. I'd be willing to bet they do that. Because Kay Chowdhury is saying that their complaints were disingenuous. And I know from firsthand experience going back a few years now that their complaints were disingenuous. They were complaining because the book got criticized at all. It was supposed to be sung from the rooftops based on the skin color of the author. And it didn't happen. Obviously because Dominic Leonard was not given the right memo. He was not told this is one of those books for which a completely separate criterion of reviewing is necessary, or terrorism. Not or you'll look bad in the judgment of history. Either you afford this book a separate tone of criticism, or terrorism, or we will go after you. We won't just respond to the review and express our outrage. We will try to paint you in the public square as a racist and get you fired, get you blacklisted so that you don't get another working gig. It's either, there are some books where you either praise it ecstatically, this is the book we have waited for our whole lives, we now have permission to live again, whatever the superlatives you want to use, or terrorism. A threat. In the real world, a threat. Go right past, we are outraged, to we, the undersigned, are outraged, at your employer. So we will see. I'd be willing to bet they respond. We may have the beginnings of a letters page brouhaha of a minor kind. I will keep you posted. But then we have the packages. So there's only two, and they're gonna have to work really, really hard to beat yesterday's finale. Let's see here. Okay, well, all right. They're gonna have to work really, really hard, and this first one does work really, really hard. This is by Sean Connolly, and this is On Every Tide, the making and remaking of the Irish world. From the great folks at Basic Books. Can you see the book? I want you to be able to see the book and also see the beanie. Right, baby? Huh? Who's your baby? Oh, who's your baby? What are you doing? Oh. Let's see here. The cultural influence of the Irish diaspora is evident all around us. God help us. In the popularity of river dance, okay, that was popular 30 years ago. The ubiquity of the Irish pub and its requisite drink, Guinness, and the enthusiastic celebration of St. Patrick's Day each year. Most big urban St. Patrick's Day parades have either been radically changed, picketed, or postponed, or canceled because of political activism. Yet when people think of the story of Irish emigration, they often think narrowly of the Great Famine of the 1840s, which caused many to flee Ireland for the United States. But the real history of the Irish diaspora is much longer, much more complicated, and more global. Okay, all right. You could substitute millions for many there. It might make the concentration on the Great Irish Potato Famine a little more understandable. It wasn't many people; it was millions of people. But anyway, in this book, the author tells the epic story of Irish migration, showing how immigrants became a force in world politics, religion, and culture. By the end of the 19th century, 2 out of every 5 people born on the island were living beyond its shores. In the US, but also spread out as far as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Argentina, and South Africa. The international economy of the 19th century was transformed by industrialization, European immigration to all corners of the globe, and international trade. It was this new world to which the Irish emigrated and which, equally important, opened up to receive them. Receive them. There's precious little in the way of opening up. As political refugees or in search of economic betterment, the Irish joined the nearly 6 million Europeans who crossed the Atlantic. They provided the cheap manual labor that fueled industrialization and empire building globally, working on railways, warehouses, and docks, or, in the case of women, in the clothing trade or as domestic laborers. This book reveals the extraordinary impact they had on the places that they settled as the dominant group in labor movements, a powerful bloc in urban politics, and in spreading and solidifying the influence of the Catholic Church. Often living in poverty and working at the bottom tier of the labor pool, Irish immigrants faced some of the same hostilities that immigrants face today. Yet, as Connolly shows, the Irish were both victims and oppressors, as they displaced indigenous people and emerged as prominent defenders of white supremacy. Okay. All right. So only non-white immigrants are good. Okay. All right. The author weaves together 300 years of history and individual stories that look beyond the stereotypical Irish immigrant of this time period. You'd have to look pretty far beyond the stereotypical Irish immigrant picture of this period in order to find a white supremacist. You'd have to look pretty far afield from that, from what those people were like, to find that. But I guess you will. I guess you'll look until you find them. Prominent defenders of white supremacy. Okay. Taking the story up to the present day, the author attempts to answer questions such as, what can the experience of the immigrant Irish tell us about the US and Europe's struggle to respond to migrants today? Pretty obvious. White immigrants are bad. And what is the future? At a time when Northern Ireland is back on the political agenda of the Irish-American lobby in the United States. Okay, well, I'm concentrating on one phrase in one publication sheet. I need not do that. That is not the book. The book is much longer than that and could have a whole bunch of other things to say. Uh, yeah, I should have known when the dialogue started being that the outside world opened up to receive the Irish, so they were welcome. Why are we so evil now? Why are we so racist now? Oh wait, they themselves were racist. Maybe that's why they were welcome. I'm obsessing about that, and I need not do that because this is just the pub sheet. The book could be a marvel of scholarship. We shall see. I don't think I'm going to be getting to this anytime soon, right? No, October. This is mid-October, so uh, we can leave my grandparents and all of their fellow white supremacists until the autumn. That's great. But then we have another a cardboard thing here. Uh, and then we'll be done for the day. Oh, fantastic. Oh, my. Okay, great. Let's see what we have here. So this will be soon. Yeah, this is May 24th. Okay, so that's real soon. And this is an author I know I love. This is a romance novel. This is Kate Bateman. This is A Daring Pursuit, part of the Ruthless Rivals series. Classic Regency cover. It's not sketched. It's not painted. You've got real life models there that are obviously real life people, but a classic Regency cover, the bright colors, uh, the sensuous pose, but no extreme nakedness, the gigantic country pile in the background. So what have we got here? The Davies and Montgomery families have been locked in an ancient feud, but it's a thin line between love and hate in the newest entry in the Ruthless Rivals series. An earlier one, or at least one of which we saw on this channel. Is that right? A Reckless Match was the last one. I know that we've seen that. I don't have a picture for it, but I know that we saw that on this channel. A Reckless Match, I guess, would have been the first book in the Ruthless Rivals series. Caris Davies is doing everything in her power to avoid marriage. Staying single is the only way to hide the secret that could ruin her and her family if it was revealed. What could that secret be? That she's not a virgin? Maybe? That she's not a woman? Well, we'll see. For the past 2 seasons, she scandalized the Ton, the polite society, with her outrageous outfits and brazen ways in a futile bid to deter potential suitors. Outwardly confident and carefree, inside she's delusioned with both men and love. There's only one person who's never bought her act, the only man who makes her heart race, Tristan Montgomery, one of her family's greatest rivals. I know I remember this series. So the first book in the series, A Reckless Match, we must have seen it on this channel. Look at all these blurbs. Okay, so the inner 2 pages of this book are full of blurbs. This is one of those square paperbacks that I don't. Yeah, they're meant to be the exact dimensions almost of a Kindle, where you just, I guess the publishers, instead of being much thinner than a Kindle, I guess the publishers thinking, well, people are holding Kindles in their hands anyway, maybe it's the form factor that they like. It's not. That's the least thing that they like. People like Kindles for a whole bunch of other reasons that don't have anything to do with the fact that it's a neat little box like this. But I can live with it. I used to say these things are really awkward when you see them crammed into the metal racks at your retail bookstore. But the only retail bookstore in Boston is closing in a couple of weeks. Those racks will be gone. I wonder how long it'll be before I even forget what it was like to go in and see them and poke through them to see what was new. I wonder how long that'll take. I need to go into that bookstore and make a final appearance. I need to make a final visit to Barnes & Noble in my lifetime. Kind of weird, but if I keep neglecting it, I'll run out of time. And I've heard rumors that the big Barnes & Noble in Boston that's closing in June already has lots of empty shelves, lots and lots of stuff picked over. I'd like to go in and make a final purchase, and I don't know how possible that would be. I'll try to do that this week. And so after that, I won't have to care, how convenient these things are to stack in a store. But this is great. Getting a Regency romance is fantastic always. And getting one that is, I forget what today's date is, but this is real soon. Probably next Tuesday. So I will get to this tonight. I will read this tonight. So those are our 2 books. On Every Tide, the making and remaking of the Irish world. Big book about the Irish diaspora. And then a new Regency romance about the Hatfields and the McCoys, the the Montagues and the Capulets, two families that have been rivals forever and ever, and the various members of their ranks that find true love. So that's your mail for today. A beautiful, beautiful day. I think my little princess is gradually waking up. Are you gradually waking up, baby? Huh? Are you? Are you gradually waking up? Yeah, I think you are. I think she is. I think she's gradually psyching herself up to encounter the world in a real way. So we'll do that. But I'm going to wrap this up. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.